सिंगार फिर भी कितनी सुंदर हो, तुम कितनी सुंदर हो। ना गजरे की धार, ना मोतियों के हार, ना कोई किया सिंगार फिर भी कितनी सुंदर हो, तुम कितनी सुंदर हो।
मन में प्यार भरा और तन में प्यार भरा, जीवन में प्यार भरा, तुम तो मेरे प्रियवर हो, तुम ही तो मेरे प्रियवर हो।
सिंगार तेरा यौवन, यौवन ही तेरा गहना, सिंगार तेरा यौवन, यौवन ही तेरा गहना। तू ताजगी फूलों की, क्या सादगी का कहना। उड़े खुशबू जब चले तू, उड़े खुशबू जब चले तू, बोले तो बजे सितार। ना गजरे की धार, ना मोतियों के हार, ना कोई किया सिंगार फिर भी कितनी सुंदर हो, तुम कितनी सुंदर हो। तेरा अंग सच्चा सोना, मुस्कान सच्चे मोती। तेरा अंग सच्चा सोना, मुस्कान सच्चे मोती। तेरे होंठ हैं मधुशाला, तू रूप की है ज्योति। तेरी सूरत जैसे मूरत, तेरी सूरत जैसे मूरत, मैं देखूं बार बार। ना गजरे की धार, ना मोतियों के हार, ना कोई किया सिंगार फिर भी कितनी सुंदर हो, तुम कितनी सुंदर हो।
मन में प्यार भरा और तन में प्यार भरा, जीवन में प्यार भरा, तुम तो मेरे प्रियवर हो, तुम ही तो मेरे प्रियवर हो।
So friends, it is puberty, it is yauvan that converts a child to adult. It is the blessing of nature which imparts attractiveness, so that two fall in love and then rise in love to create beloveds like themselves. And this, friends, is reproduction. Let us first understand, how do humans reproduce? That is, produce one like themselves. Genes, first of all, make stations and decide how those stations will function in males and females. The stations are the hypothalamus, which secretes releasing factors which come from the hypothalamico-pituitary veins into the pituitary. And they release hormones like antidiuretic hormone, like growth hormone, like hormones which are stimulating other glands, like thyroid stimulating hormone, adrenocorticotropic hormone. And they also secrete gonadotropic hormones, which result in the development of gonads, testes in males and ovaries in females. The supporting glands for these gonads are the adrenal and the thyroid. The male gonads produce sperms and the female gonads produce ovums. The ova are produced from menarche to menopause. The supporting glands, the adrenal and the thyroid, along with the gonadal hormones, produce secondary sexual characters to distinguish men from women and make them attractive for each other. Characters like the male voice, the tall, muscular, bearded, hairy, conical-bodied, flat-chested man with the scrotum, testes in the scrotum and the penis, and the female-voiced, short, soft, smooth, curved, fair, fat distribution characteristic, mounded chest, and genital organs like labia majora, minora, clitoris, and intra-abdominal reproductive organs like the ovaries, the uterus, and the vagina. So thus, men and women are different and they are attracted to each other. Thus, the sperms get a chance to fertilize the ovum. A zygote is implanted into a uterus, which is initially prepared up to the ovulation by the follicle stimulating hormone, which promotes the nurse cells in the ovaries to secrete estrogen. And then by the progesterone, which is secreted from the corpus luteum, which remains after ovulation, which is simply the follicle minus the ovum. And into this implanted uterus, the zygote implants, develops into a baby. Baby delivers through labor initiated by oxytocin from the pituitary, and this also promotes lactation and love for the child. The newborn feeds on the mother's milk, is weaned, grows into a new individual, only somewhat like the mother and father, but certainly different. Mother and father support the child in the cradle of affection and bond that they have for each other till he and she can support himself or herself. The follicle stimulating hormone from the pituitary stimulates the nerve cells in the follicles of the ovary. One of them undergoes meiosis and becomes the ovum. The rest of the nerve cells secrete estrogen, which prepares the endometrium of the uterus up to the ovulation. Then a surge of luteinizing hormone from the pituitary causes ovulation. The ovum ruptures the wall of the ovary, floating into the abdomen. It is grabbed by the fallopian tube, travels down it, is fertilized, and implants in the uterine endometrium, prepared from ovulation to implantation by progesterone, secreted by the corpus luteum, which is the follicle minus the ovum after ovulation. If not fertilized, corpus luteum degenerates, the progesterone of corpus luteum is withdrawn, estrogen has already decreased as the pre-ovulation follicle was the post-ovulation corpus luteum. In absence of estrogen and progesterone, the endometrium is discharged by the uterus as menses. Let us now consider that if this system goes wrong, what can be the various presentations? The patients can present with period problems, either absent or early or late. They can present with early or late development of secondary sexual characters or abnormal secondary sexual characters, that is, girls like boys or boys like girls, or more masculinity in boys and femininity in girls. They can present as abnormal sex organs, which is heterosexuals. They can present as infertility or multiple pregnancies. They can present as inability to carry the pregnancy or abortions. They can present with problems in delivery, that is prematurity, problems in lactation. And when this is the problem, there can be associated growth disorders like tall people but mainly short or dwarfs, the symmetrical intelligent pituitary dwarf, the short-limbed intelligent achondroplasic, and dwarfs with congenital defects, mental retardation, as for cretins in thyroid deficiency, and with mental retardation hepatosplenomegaly in infiltrative disorders like Hurler syndrome or Hunter syndrome, which we also called as gargoylism. There can be hormonal problems, hyper or hypopituitary, thyroid or adrenal. Congenital defects have to be looked for, and finally, genetic abnormality has to be defined by karyotyping. So this slide tells you what happens when the breast buds around 10.5, pubic hair at about 11, peak height velocity at 11.4, menarche at 12.8, adult breasts by 14.6, adult pubic hair by 13.7, and finally menarche latest by 16. How does this happen? So the initial thing is increase in the gonadotropin release factor by the hypothalamus, and that increases the growth hormone. Growth hormone causes insulin resistance. Therefore, there is a compensatory rise in insulin levels in blood, hyperinsulinemia. The insulin growth factor binding protein is used up. Therefore, circulating insulin growth factor increases, promoting growth. This growth causes acceleration in linear growth, and you get the peak height velocity at 11.4 years, the fastest rate of growth. On the other hand, the sex hormone binding globulin is also used up so that the sex hormone increases. On the other hand, the pulsatile release of gonadotropic release hormone by the hypothalamus, high, low, due to the removal of the inhibitory influence by the higher centers, produce surges in estrogen level and depressions, so that finally the first bleeding is produced. The estrogen causes more increase in the growth hormone, a positive feedback cycle is established, and this goes on till you get menarche. And so, after the growth spurts, that we can use various stagings of the pubic hair, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or the breast described by Tanner, and we can examine the genitalia both externally and internally to detect any problems in their development. Pubarchy is pubic hairs, median time that they develop is 10.5 years, and adrenarche is axillary hairs. Then we come to menarche. At the puberty, which starts between 9 to 16 years, menarche follows it, occurring between 10 to 16 years at a median of 12.8 years age. There is a spurt of growth, and because of the spurt of growth, the body weight increases to the critical weight. So the Fritch's hypothesis is that you do need a critical weight for menarche. And since foreign races are heavier, their menarche is generally earlier. So as there is growth, the lean fat increases to 22% of the body weight. The fat secretes leptin, which signals hypothalamus to start menarche. It cyclically increases and decreases the follicle stimulating hormone, leading to increasing and decreasing levels of estrogen from nerve cells of the ovary. And this causes the first bleed, which is due to the withdrawal of estrogen. All initial cycles are anovulatory. Later, ovulation starts. The timing of the first menses is usually within the first year of peak growth velocity at Tanner's stage 4 of the breast and the hair development. So, puberty is pronounced to be delayed if there is no breast development by the 14 years of age and or there is primary amenorrhea, no menarche by 16 years of age, with or without decreased or delayed breast or hair in the axilla or the pubic region. Now, if there is delayed puberty, it can be because of the pituitary failure. And because of the pituitary failure, we call it hypogonadotropic. The typical investigational indication is a low FSH level. And if the pituitary fails, because of the failure of the growth hormone, there can be a dwarf, but sometimes the height can be normal also. And if genetics is involved, as in Prader-Willi syndrome or Lawrence-Moon-Beadle syndrome or Kallmann syndrome. The Kallmann syndrome is the most prominent because this autosomal recessive or X-linked genetic trait with a family history positive is associated with CNS signs in form of anosmia, color blindness, nerve deafness, or cerebellar ataxia, or midline congenital defects. So Kallmann syndrome should be carefully looked for. If the ADH fails, you get diabetes insipidus. If ACTH fails, you get Addison's disease, Addisonian crisis. If thyroid stimulating hormone fails, you get hypothyroidism. But with hypogonadism, you should always rule out secondary causes of pituitary damage, congenital causes like hydrocephalus, inflammatory causes like meningitis or encephalitis, infiltration like galactosemia, idiopathic causes, iatrogenic like radiotherapy, chemotherapy or surgery, and finally neoplasms of the pituitary. If there is delayed puberty or hypergonadotropic because of the hypergonadotropic reasons, in this the failure is of the gonads, and therefore usually the gonadotropic hormones are raised. They are trying to support the failing gonads, and therefore you find that there is a raise in the FSH. First of all, you must think of severe weight loss or even psychogenic. Then you should rule out mumps, tuberculosis, galactosemia, iatrogenic, and autoimmune damage of the gonads. If the autoimmune damage is isolated, it can be for the ovaries, or it is a polyglandular syndrome. It is type 1 when thyroid and adrenal are involved, and type 2 if with the thyroid and adrenal, pancreas are also involved. After ruling this out, we can do karyotyping. The Turner syndrome with a 45X or a Turner's mosaic, where there can be a 46XX and 45X or 46XY with 45X. The important thing about the Turner's mosaic is that there can be a normal menarche which is followed by a premature secondary ovarian failure. For the Turner syndrome, which is the commonest problem in this group, affecting 1 upon 2,500 live-born girls, we will give it more attention in the next slide. The second genetic problem can be gonadal dysgenesis. It can be either XX or XY. The XX is called as Perrault syndrome. It is pure gonadal dysgenesis, normal stature but sexually an infant with bilateral streak gonads. And you can see those gonads on laparoscopy. This can be with or without sensory neural deafness. The XY type with the SRY mutation is called as Swyer syndrome. In this, gonadectomy has to be done to avoid malignant transformation of the dysgenetic testes. It is the male genotype developing as a female phenotype because there is no testosterone and there is no anti-Mullerian hormone which can inhibit the development of female organs. The third genetic problem which can lead to delayed puberty is the fragile X syndrome. With nearly normal genetics, you can have congenital enzyme defects like 17-hydroxylase deficiency, which prevents the conversion of mineralocorticoids to estrogen. So, estrogen falls but mineralocorticoids increase. You can need supplementation of estrogen, progesterone or cortisone to deal with this problem of 17-hydroxylase deficiency. Then let us give attention to the most common of the genetic problems, which is the Turner syndrome, 45X. What you see is stunted growth. Some are harmless features like epicanthic folds in the eye, low set ears, high arched palate, webbing of the neck, shield chest or flat chest with distanced breasts. Some problems which may need correction like cubitus valgus or genu valgum. Some problems cause disability, severe disability like sensorineural deafness. Thyroiditis needs medical treatment. Cystic hygroma may need surgery. There can be a bicuspid aortic wall or coarctation of the aorta, and diabetes mellitus and renal involvement may be life-endangering. The main treatment consists of estrogen and progesterone to induce menses and growth hormone to increase growth if the syndrome is detected early. So this is depression of puberty or delayed puberty. But there is a condition when there can be precocious puberty or premature puberty. So trauma, tuberculosis or a hematoma in the brain can cause an FSH increase, which is the surrogate of gonadotropin release factor increase, and this can cause true precocious puberty. The pseudo precocious puberty is usually based on peripheral gland hyperactivity. Adrenals secrete androgens, so you get heterosexual hirsutism in girls, pigmentation of the skin, cafe au lait spots, or you can even get McCure-Albright syndrome. The gland-based hyperactivity of the ovarian cyst or the granulosa tumor of the ovary can cause excessive secretion of estrogen, so that the female features are not affected, but increased estrogen levels can cause amenorrhea. Then, or abnormal bleeding. The next is when receptors are sensitive. They are usually in the breast. Therefore, you can get temporary, partial breast development. So, if you get breast below 3 years, it is thelarchy. Axillary hair below 6 years is adrenarchy. And if premature, menarche, you must rule out sexual assault or foreign body. How would you investigate these cases? These cases are investigated to assess the general condition, to assess the genes, to assess hormones, pituitary, FSH, LH, thyroid, TSH, T3 and T4, adrenal, DHEA, testosterone or ACTH, ovary, estrogen and progesterone. Then you can assess the enzymes. You can find out the 17-hydroxylase levels. You should assess the intracranial lesions, CT scan or MRI. You should assess associations, bone maturity through X-ray wrist, and you can assess the gonads through laparoscopy or sperm count or estrogen progesterone levels. How to treat? The most important thing is detect and treat sinister causes, intracranial lesions, orchidectomy to prevent malignant transformation, Hurler's-Hunter's disease, deal with electrolyte imbalance. The second thing is, if the hormones are deficient, detect early and replace growth hormone, ACTH, steroids, insulin or ADH. The third is try to restore menses using estrogen and progesterone cyclically, gradually increasing the dose. You can also use oral contraceptive pills. The fourth thing is try to restore fertilization. So treat infertility if need be by harvesting the ovum, doing an in vitro fertilization and implanting the zygote. Then treat hirsutism. This is the common craze in the ladies and makes them shell out the most money in most women. Then you can do surgery for abnormal development of sex organs. But finally, reassurance, counseling, wait and watch, masterly inactivity rather than stupid activity is the responsible treatment for these problems. The important thing is that you must explain the prognosis carefully and truthfully, and you must inform on whether life is shortened. If yes, you should be able to talk on median survival or 5-year survival. That means you should be able to give numbers. You should talk on mental retardation, whether it is progressive, stationary or reversible. You should be able to talk on deformed and disabled, whether they are treatable or not. And if treatable, how much treatable? Then you must concentrate on activities of daily living, ability for recreation, socialization or vocation, ability to childbear, and this comes in rehabilitation. So the next thing is whether the periods are affected, what are the chances that they will be restored to normalcy, the chances of transmission to the next generation. So you may have to give marriage counseling. If looks are affected, you should be able to convince them to accept hirsutism, the mothers and the daughters. Then you must tell them in detail about the plan of the treatment and the expected effects, results and complications of treatment. Explaining prognosis and tender loving care is the most important thing that you can do for these patients. Thank you.